Okay, welcome to this episode of KUDEN. Let me just shift my notes here. I apologize. Should have had them up. Anyway, all right. So again, welcome to KUDEN. I'd like to think that this is the show where martial strategy meets personal mastery. Yeah, sounds good anyway. Anyway, all right. So during this episode, we're going to focus on uh, those times, right? And so this could be for folks who feel this way just generally, right? Or for those times when any of us, right, feel trapped in any part of our life, not just martial arts training, not just day to day kind of thing, right? But trapped by circumstance, trapped by habit, trapped by the idea that we have no real choice, or we are stuck with our lot in life, or uh, you know, no choices, one choice, whatever. Okay, so the focus of this episode is to break that illusion, right, and to give you some insights, some lessons that I picked up along the way to start that journey into freedom. Hatsumi Sensei's always discussed that from the perspective of freedom, uh, returning to zero, being a no limits person, that kind of thing, right? So, again, when we talk about freedom, right, not the kind that comes from luck or the kind that comes from rescue, but the kind that comes from seeing more than one way out, one way to do things, right? And choosing to take uh, control, right? To take it, right? So we'll dive into that and more as soon as we get back.
So, the big question is this: how are self-defense and success-minded people like us, concerned citizens worried about protecting ourselves, our loved ones, and the things we care about from the monsters we know exist in the world? How do we train in a way that gives us the skills, knowledge, and understanding we need without becoming paranoid fighters or killers ourselves, and yet still allows us to be the hero protector the world needs us to be? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Jeffrey Miller, and welcome to KUDEN Radio.
Okay, we are back, right? I decided to wear another one of our training t-shirts. This one has, I think I described this before, one of the original logo that I created for the training. So for those of you listening audio only, I'll do my best at describing it. But what I have is a silhouette of a ninja, right, in a doko no kamae, right? This one of these so-called defensive postures, um, body, mind, spirit, attitude. Um, Often people diminish it or just reduce it down to stance, but no, right? Kamae are not stances any more than dachi stance, right? Is a kamae. So, but the reason for this is the feeling, and again, strategy, feeling, those kind of things can shift and change because they're multi-leveled. But the one that we borrow for folks when they first get introduced to this posture in our module 2 is it splits the difference, right? There's an in-yo, om-yo, yin-yang kind of thing going on. So the lead side of our bodies is in a kind of offending position, saying, "Look, I don't want to fight," right? Or it's establishing distance, creating kind of a no man's land kind of thing, right? And then that rear hand is balled up, held really, really high, threatening to throw something at them, threatening an attack. So where the front side of the body is in offending position, saying, I don't want to fight, right? The rear side of the body is saying, but if you come in here, I've got something for you. Okay. So we're standing on that line, right? And then obviously it's flanked by the Bujin kanji for Bujinkan, right? So divine warrior. And then behind it, right? Because this supports everything. And it's the difference between just doing ninpo or Budo Taijutsu and doing Nitsu and doing ninpo, right? Ninpo. So what's behind here is one of these Vajra, or in Japanese, it's called a Kongo, diamond thunderbolts. hints at our uh, life mastery, personal development, spiritual kind of side, but specifically, it is a three-pointed Vajra. It's a Sanko, right? They're Iko, Niko, Sanko, Goko, Kyuko, just number of points. Right? And so this one, the Sanko, represents the three mysteries or the three secrets, the Sanmitsu, right? The thought, word, and deed that is the secrets of success, right? And so this actually, I'm not going to turn around, but it's the front breast logo of this particular T-shirt that is a commemorative one that came from our yearly camp, right? Our yearly training camp. This one was from 2002. Hard to believe that was how long ago? Yeah. So we've been doing this for a little while. Anyway, so got James hanging out in the wings, I think. James, his computer decided to do some upgrades, updates, threw the proverbial monkey in his wrench there for a bit. But James, are you on? Are you still there? Maybe. Oh, there he is. Ta-da! Look, it's James. So, who do we have? Who's on? Who's signed in already?
Well, so far we got Jared, Victor, and
Awesome.
Trinity.
Well, that's not bad, right? Until somebody else just hopped on or whatever. It was 50% of the original crew that signed on, but that's cool, right? So it's good to have Victor here. Trinity, I'm going to be seeing her in a couple of days. Trinity should, not should, right? But proud pop-up moment. She graduates with her master's on Thursday, walks the stage. So I will be in DC for a very long day, watching her do that and then coming back. So, yeah, so cool beans. James just got promoted to, I don't know, he needs to kill some outgoing university students who think they're better than everybody else, or just don't give a shit. And it's days like that I and Hatsumi Sensei and a couple of my other teachers have either inferred or flat out said that we live in sad times when people who need a lesson, right? We can't teach them one without getting in trouble ourselves. So a lot of people could not survive in a warrior-based society, right? They either act like dirtbags, right? Or they just piss and whine and moan too much. And so, yeah. And not just Japanese, right? Sparta was known for just killing off the weak. Maybe if they didn't do that, maybe they would have lasted a little bit longer, but I don't know. I know that the women were just as tough as the men. You don't want to cross certain lines. Anyway, so yeah, so dude, we crossed another benchmark, episode 261. So 39 and counting before we hit 300. What should we do for 300? I don't know. We had a group of folks in for the 200 and chatted and laughed and joked, and some of my friends who are not on normally, right? They did their best, but they're like, holy crap, right? It's this long and you're still talking. And yeah, it was a celebration. I had a little cheers moment, and yeah, it's all good. So we'll have to think about what we're going to do for 300, right? We had a commemorative T-shirt for 200. Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, and it's probably time for me to start thinking about, I don't know, our next Japan trip. That'd be cool. Yeah, I'd say make a big party out of that, but yeah, I tend to vet people to make sure that I don't have to deal with another embarrassment, not just to the Bujinkan, but to everybody else that was involved. Yeah. So, all right, we good? Anybody else sign in? I know the numbers are flying.
Greg said good morning from Australia.
Good morning. Good morning.
And
Awesome.
Victor said congratulations, Trinity.
Yeah, there you go. I bet. I mean, we can't see her at the moment, but I bet she has this big old cheesy, toothy smile going on right now because I know my daughter. Anyway, she's probably crocheting at the same time as well because she got all of her reports in. So now she's crocheting something. Who knows? It's her new. It's a new thing. And if she isn't, I'll be like really surprised. She's watching us, so she's not hunting for anime. So anyway, so all right. Well, let's just dive into things, shall we? We'll just do our thing and we'll open things up to questions and input and whatnot as we go along. All right. So I'm going to start this one off with a very, very summarized version of what we might call my origin story. If you've been around for a while, you may have weathered through or listened to episode, what was that, James? 68? I think it was 68. So, man, it's been a long time since that one. So that was the reboot episode where, or after I had taken some time off between having now Shidoshi, right? Then he was a second degree black belt. Eric White, who was, I always called him Radio God because he worked, not just worked at a radio station. He started off in sales, selling advertising and stuff like that, but then worked up to being a radio personality. And so when the station was automated on the weekends, we would go into one of the production booths, and that was when KUDEN was just, there was no live version; it was just pre-recorded, and so we would put 1 to 3 episodes in the can, so to speak, and then we would just kind of divvy them out. We really didn't have a set schedule back then. It was just having a good time, doing it like a morning drive time radio show. So it was a lot of banter and laughing at people doing stupid stuff, but lots of content as well. So, and then, life changes and things happen, and he ended up having to kind of uproot and move. And then we could have continued it, but he moved like all the way across the country. And so time zones really put a damper on things. So I took about a year and a half. I think it was about a year and a half, just trying to figure out how to restart that same thing or how to strategically move this thing forward. Right. So at that time, it's just kind of looking to have another channel or avenue to help folks. Right. Just another free channel, which is always funny when people tell me that, I only care about the money or whatever, because my programs, I mean, there's a good cross section, right, of price points and stuff, right, James? But at the same time, people like to say those things. But anyway, here we are. But it was just a channel to share this side of the art of the training, things that I've got from Hatsumi Sensei that have nothing to do with ducking a physical punch or kick or knife stab or whatever, but helps us handle and be more successful in handling the punches, stabs, and things like that life can throw at us, or re-engineer, as in the case of this particular topic, right? Reprogram, re-engineer the internal workings that we picked up, either intentionally, somebody intentionally gave us that lesson, or incidentally, right, based on watching other people do things, or self-created, right, along the way. And now we're feeling stuck or whatever. Okay. So anyway, this is really kind of focused around this what I call the illusion of no choice, because I used to use those words as well. Okay, um, a lot of you know this, but for those of you who don't, I just need to get this out, right? So, Atsumi Sensei and I have very similar origin stories. Um, Similar in some ways, not in others. One of which was abuse, right? Um, or just like having to walk on eggshells because the good moments uh, could very quickly flip, right? What that means is that I grew up in a home that was at best, right, financially, like lower middle class, usually upper lower class, because no matter what kind of job my stepdad had and how much money was being made, and it was significant in the mid to late 70s, just pissed it away, right? Just anyway. So again, he blew all the money he had or made, right? Or he slept his days away, right? Having my mom call him off work with some fake BS illness that resulted in like half a paycheck, right? We often were relegated to eating fried egg sandwiches or cooked macaroni with a few slices of American cheese on top, right? That was we didn't know it at the time because that's the way we lived, right? But I call it our poor version of mac and cheese. Or we lived off of food that he stole from his cook's position, that he took home after a weekend drill with the Air National Guard. Okay. On top of that, right, violence, fear, scarcity, false bravado, and then empty promises, right? These things were all normal. Okay. So, well, as much as I don't want to hear from people that I don't understand, all of these conditions and whatnot, that's part of the enduring. I have to put up with it because everybody would like to believe that their situation or experience is unique, and that in and of itself makes them average because everybody thinks their situation is unique, right? But right, that kind of environment taught me something dangerous, and what it taught me was that you don't have a choice, right? It taught me that, look, you just survive. You keep your head down and accept whatever life hands you and hope that you don't end up homeless and starving, right? But here's what I learned, right? As I moved through life, as I bumped into my martial arts teachers, not in general, right? Because I had lots of martial arts teachers that taught just that, martial arts, fight moves, okay? But what I learned from Hatsumi Sensei and my earlier teachers in this art is that belief, it's not the truth, right? It's a trap. It's a mental prison. And too many people live their whole lives in it, being guided by it, right? And believing that is just something that happened to them, right? They just ended up, right, in this position. This is their lot in life, whatever, right? In fact, one of my sisters, I have a brother and two sisters. They're both half brother, two half sisters. We never saw each other that way. It was always brothers, sisters, that kind of thing. But one of my sisters, right, couldn't break free of that same kind of mindset and ended up dying of a brain tumor after living her life as a virtual carbon copy of that life that I was raised in. So that's not the story's not being told as oh, woe was me, or look how bad things were, or whatever. But I really do need to set the stage that when somebody pipes up with, well, that's an old way of thinking, about any of these principles or concepts, right? That's not the way it's done anymore. You don't understand, uh, those kind of things, right? No, really, no, really, I do. And just like I know that breaking free isn't easy either, because that program runs deep, right? The part of it that we consciously know that we're doing, or want to deny that we're doing, or think that we're, if I just swim upstream faster, stronger, harder, right? Um, we can get away from it. Those kind of things, right? That's Man, that's just scratching the surface, right? Because just take your age, right? Um, Probably held these things for not years, but decades. And so the longer we've held them, the longer we've run the habit pattern, the more entrenched it is, and the more it has shifted to the subconscious and even unconscious level. And what I mean by unconscious is it's in muscle memory, right? Certain experiences will pop up, or we'll find ourselves in uh, certain types of situations that will trigger this automatic response, right? It will trigger how the mind processes it, how we think about it, how we plan, the words that come out of our mouths. Uh, it's interesting, right? Mikio discusses and approaches and treats uh, these things uh, by helping to expose them, because we can't do anything with them. We can't treat the problem. We can't overcome things until like it's brought to the surface. As a matter of fact, I had a one-on-one coaching session with one of my personal Mikyo students. Right, she's has made the transition, and so we're going through these different things. And one of the things that came up during that session this morning was this idea that again, we have to bring it to conscious level, and practices, meditations, uh, uh, we'll just use the word pondering at the moment, right? But these, we're working certain things to get these other things to arise, but this process of uncovering ferrets out those things that we think or thought that we were long since past, we've been over it for a long time, right? Of course, we're thinking clearly. We're you're not the boss of me, right? I'm in charge of my own life. And then we find out that there's something in there that tells us that the 6-year-old or the 12-year-old or the, whatever is still driving, right? And then we've got to treat that, right? Very much like a doctor diagnosing an illness and prescribing the correct medicine, right? So anyway, back to the story, right? So again, there were many turning points, but I want to kind of highlight one, right, as it relates to what we're talking about during this episode. Okay. So the first crack in the wall came when I bought a book on Ninjutsu. As a matter of fact, it was The Ninja and Their Secret Fighting Art, right, by Stephen Hayes, way back in the day. And either in the back of that book or there were excerpts from some of the other books that I hadn't gotten yet. This is the first one. I was in the military. I was in the bookstore, the on post bookstore, and I was just kind of looking at things, and this book kind of jumped out at me. It was hardback. It was a little bit on the expensive side, but you know what? I bought the book, and then now that I had this name, right, of this teacher, then I started looking in martial arts magazines and things like that, right? So I can't remember if it was in the book itself or if it was just from one of these excerpted articles or whatever, right? But there was this address, and again, the author was a teacher that I deeply respected, right? And I wanted to train with him, right? He was the top person in the Western world. Okay. And I just thought, one, there, I don't know, I've never heard of this stuff before. I don't know how many of these teachers are, but here's this opportunity, right? We actually have this thing in Mikyo too that, you know, encountering the teachings, the wisdom teachings is difficult. Now that I've encountered them, if I don't act on them now, when in the future will I have the opportunity to do so again? Now, it was decades, at least a decade, if not more, before I encountered that statement. But I know that feeling. I had that feeling, right? And so here's this opportunity staring me right in the face. Here's this address, right? I can reach out, right? No, we didn't have email. No, we didn't. I know. It's like caveman days. But anyway, I had this thing, right? But what I also had was this sense of terror, right? I was terrified, right? To write a letter, put my name on it, drop this in the mail, and send it off. Even though I was an accomplished, experienced military cop who, even though I was one of the shortest guys, I was one of the shortest guys in the military police corps, because when I got in, they suspended or they waived the height requirements so I could get in because they were short on MPs. No pun intended. The minimum height for a military policeman then, I don't know what it is now, was 5'8", right? It's kind of the average height of Western males. And I was 5'6" and change, but I got in. So when I say I was accomplished, there were very few things that I feared, right? And the way I translate it today is 70% of the people I ever arrested were trained killers and drunk or high or enraged or whatever. So, but even in the face of having all this evidence that at best or at worst, I was, an average person, but I had this occupation where I could really use this stuff and whatever, right? Just terrified, right? There was just this feeling inside, who am I? Right. But I took a small step, and that address actually pointed to getting a membership, right? A general membership and a newsletter, right? So at least it was a baby step, right? And then back in the day, they weren't email digital newsletters. They were, he had these things written, edited, pictures added, layout, sent off to a printer, and then literally physically mailed. But I took that step, right? So instead of writing to him, let's just do this thing, right? At least it puts me that one step closer. Okay. And that's fine. But in every newsletter, there was a listing of upcoming seminars. There were very often, right? There was listings of the other books that he had written, but at the same time, there was always this open-ended, engage with the training, right? He was offering, come train with us, come train with me. And so, the more and more I read the articles that were in the newsletter, saw these training opportunities, saw pictures, group pictures of people that were training and other people that were students who had attained significant rank and whatnot, and they themselves were writing articles, right? More and more, I felt the drive, right, to reach out and to train in this art but I also felt all of the inner resistance. Right. But right, one night on duty, right, it's kind of a slow night, and I was at the MP desk. I can't remember. Maybe I was working the desk that night, but either way, it was a slow night, and I just pulled the trigger, and I wrote a personal letter directly to him. Right, all the while, the whole time, doubting myself, fearing rejection, embarrassment, humiliation. Right, because for decades, for until I was 18 years old, this stepdad who had a sixth grade education and caved with, around anybody that had any level of confidence or tough guy, right, syndrome. He was the tough guy in the house, but not so much outside. But for that entire time, right, he countered my high grades in school by calling me stupid and by uh, breaking that part down. It was just a constant kind of thing, right? And so that was in there, just boiling around, right? I mean, I just heard stupid, worthless, all kinds of things, right, for a long, long time. And now I know how the process works, right? I know how it got in there, and I know how it was driving. Um, all I knew then was that I had this push pull problem, right? Um, Again, the whole time I was writing this letter, right, I just kept thinking, right, who am I to write to him, especially directly to him, right? He had a staff that handled things, and they answered most of the letters and whatnot, but I wrote the letter to him, right? What if he thinks that I'm nothing, right? Would he even respond at all, right? Given all of the quote unquote better people than me contacting him. But I wrote the letter anyway. Okay. And it changed everything because he actually responded, right? With I'd have to meet you and, get to know you, make sure that, because lots of people tell me they want to train. Lots of people, and so, no pressure, right? If you want to move forward, it's on you. But maybe the first step is to come to a seminar and then go from there, right? But that one moment of courage, and I know we're all martial artists. Nobody wants to admit that we're not brave. We're not shaking in our boots or tabi or whatever, right? But right, I'm more than willing to share those kind of things because it got me where I am, and it was a different version of me, right? And so I needed to know that. I needed to ferret those things out so that here we are, right? Episode 261 of a podcast that I didn't give any thought to. Right? As a matter of fact, when I first contacted Eric White, he was one of my students, and he was in radio and stuff. And I called him into my office one day, and I said, I want to do this thing, but I don't want it to be a talking head, that kind of thing, right? I really wanted to kind of be a blend of education and kind of entertainment, right? And what was in my head was more like a morning drive time kind of thing. And you're in radio, and so I like to propose that we partner up on this because you have the technical know-how and you can control the flow. And it would almost be like not just a partnership, but almost like an interview kind of thing, right? Every episode. And he loved it, and the rest was history. But I didn't have any misgivings. I never even gave any thought to, like, what if people don't like it, and who am I to do this or whatever. I just, by that point, just decided to do it, right? But again, that one point, sitting at the MP station in South Korea, right? That one moment of courage would go on to give me access to the mentors, to the teachers, to the tools that not only transform my life, but that I share on a regular basis and has and is continuing to transform the lives of other people. Okay. Now, it didn't happen all at once, but it started the change. Okay. And the reality is that change begets change, right? We can fall into the trap of believing that, if I just do or say the right things, then everything will just change. Right? If I believe hard enough, right? Click my heels together, blow out the candles, whatever. And it is true that if we do the right things, say the right, those kind of things, right, things will change. But it requires consistency, and it does require hard work. And most of the hard work is the climbing over the shit piles of prior programming, right? That we may or may not know is even there. Okay. But again, change begets change. And that one decision gave me something I never had before. Another option, a real option, which then led to additional options. Okay? The additional option was not just wishing, not just hoping, not just thinking someday, right? It was the option of taking action without knowing what the outcome would be, and regardless of the outcome, and being willing to, fail, be seen in the wrong light. I mean, look at it today, right? Then I was terrified of writing to a teacher who could give me or teach me the lessons that, I knew I needed. And today, right, I'm not terrified or worried about the shit. Excuse me, I don't want to get kicked off YouTube, right? The trolls and negative inspirations that want to tell me that I'm wrong or that want to laugh or whatever. Okay, it's just. Okay? But I promise you, I was not always this way. Okay. Again, credit where credit's due, because it was not an easy path, right? And there were lots and lots of opportunities to take the blue pill, right? And just tell myself whatever story I wanted to tell myself for the rest of my life. But from that single letter, over time, right, came relationships with my martial arts teacher, also with military leaders who trained me, and I tuned in differently, right? And what I found was that they were teaching me to think in contingencies, right? I reflected back on and paid more attention during conversations with my grandparents, specifically my maternal grandparents, because my paternal or step paternal grandparents, that's where my stepdad got his stuff. So that wasn't working, right? But my maternal grandparents, they're the ones who modeled what I would call quiet, powerful resilience. That they didn't set out to make a name for themselves, and yet my grandfather had awards and accolades and things from heads of state in countries that even when I was growing up didn't exist anymore. Because once I started getting these lessons and I started reflecting back on them as role models, like my grandfather would put pen to paper and write to heads of state that he didn't know. He'd find out how to get in touch with them, and he would write a letter. He was this florist. He was an engineer, as well. I worked at that point at a manufacturing company that made the trailers that go on like tractor trailers, right? These big freight hauling kind of things. But he worked on several NASA missions, Mercury, Gemini, those kind of things. But he just he wasn't looking for awards or anything like that. But they ended up being bestowed because he just reached out, and some of the letters that he wrote had nothing to do with telling somebody that he thought they were doing a good job or whatever. But he had no misgivings in telling somebody that consider this, or hey, I have an idea, right? And like he became pen pals with a lot of these people. It was just mind boggling, right? And what I had taken for granted or skipped over, I thought he was just crazy. I mean, who just writes letters to bigwigs and leaders of their own country and stuff like that when you're just you're a florist, right? You run a greenhouse and flower shop kind of thing. Well, he did. So anyway, uh, so the the lessons from these folks as they started kicking in, right? Especially again, no pun intended. Hasumi Sensei, these martial arts teachers in Ninpo, right? They didn't give me comfort. They gave me vision, right? What I initially saw as constant nagging, because I did at the very beginning, right? Like I couldn't mention, like even a lot of people do that, right? I'm going to write a book someday, right? Oh, my grandfather, uh, one or two of my Ninpo teachers, whatever. Every time I bump into them or go to visit, right? Is that finished yet? That kind of thing, right? And so I learned to stop using empty words, right? I stopped, learned to stop uh, uh, trying to impress certain people by um, saying things like that or expressing a goal that really wasn't a goal. I mean, it was, but it wasn't something that I believed I could do. Okay. It's kind of fucked up, but it's true. Okay. Again, what I initially saw as constant nagging, right, eventually transformed into the lessons I realized that they were giving me, right, on things like accountability, focus, avoiding pie in the sky dreaming that had no action behind it, right? Lessons on being a man of my word, right? And starting with myself, right? Instead of judging other people, right? It's the man in the mirror, right? We all know the stories, we all know the cliches. A lot of us have shared the memes, right? But that's way too easy these days, right? And there were more. There were a lot more, right? And they trained me to see what others miss, like not even just the things that people take for granted, or the things that like it's easy for people to miss that which they don't know is going on, right? But the stuff that was right in front of us, right? Paying attention to uh, my vocabulary and how I say things, right? How I think, the internal dialogue, right? And what that's telling me about that programming, right? Um, but it was a hard ride, and I had to keep making decisions about whether or not I was going to stick it out or if I was just going to keep swearing at them in my head. Okay? So, but one of those things that kept recurring was a convenient little saying that people have when uh, they act on things and then it doesn't work out, right? Negative consequences, or it came from this feeling of being trapped or not having any choices, right? I mean, and people literally say that, right? What choice did I have, right? I didn't have any choice. Um, or, things like that, right? And so, uh, I can't remember where I got this. I can't remember if it was from inside Ninjutsu or outside or whatever. I'm pretty sure it didn't come from Reverend Jikai, because that stuff is etched into my head, because Diamond Thunderbolt path is not an easy path to walk. But one of the most important tools that I ever learned, and a lot of my students know this because I mention this quite a bit. It was that significant, right? It was just this little model, right? And I call it options by the numbers. I don't know what the hell it was originally called, but it's a numbers-based look at how much power we actually have in any given moment. Not how much we think we have, how much we actually have. Right? And it's based on a counter to that mindset, right? Behind when someone says, I had no other choice, or what else was I supposed to do? Or just they just feel stuck between two options, or whatever it is, right? And coincidentally, right, this model was picked up early in the stages of training, but before I learned just how powerful and significant the Sanmitsu and the lessons within Ninpo were, right? And so it's a very, very simple model, right? And if nothing else, it made me, and it should make anybody who's like looking at it seriously, recognize that some of these statements, while it doesn't matter that everybody else says them, right? They're a flat out lie. Okay, they're not just BS. They're like, one of them is absolutely impossible. Okay, and then if we really looked at what we're saying, the meaning behind the words, right? I know we think it means one thing. It's kind of like one of my stepkids, consistently growing up, just got words backwards, right? And luckily they were pretty resilient, so they'd come home and like share this story, and how they would say something, and everybody would laugh, and then they'd realize what they said, it was the wrong word, right? Like one time they were doing an anatomy thing, and they pointed to their breastbone, right? And called it a scrotum instead of sternum, right? So of course, ha ha ha, that kind of thing, right? Then another time they were in a science class, and apparently the teacher was talking about, the whole thing was on childbirth and that kind of thing. It was, I don't know if it was a health class, science class, whatever. And they said that they were born circumcision instead of C-section. So anyway, we still laugh about this stuff to this day, but anyway, but people do that, right? They have their own little definition, because some things they would also do is they would call something, and nobody would understand. And they would get frustrated, and we're like, you don't need to get frustrated. We understand, right? Because the word they used had a different definition than the one they were applying, because we would correct it and say, no, that means this, that, well, I use this word, and to me it means this. Well, you're going to have a problem communicating with people. Okay. So what they were doing is just arbitrarily assigning their own definition to words that, so we do it all the time. Okay. But if we were to look at what we're really saying to ourselves and to the world, whether we know it or not, right? It's kind of a gateway, right? An inner look. And so I'm just going to do 4 of these numbers. Okay. Could we go on? Yeah, but the point is in these 4. Okay, because this is where most things are. Number 4 is where freedom begins. Okay. The rest of them are in one way or another, blocking, limiting, inhibiting, or stomping the shit out of freedom. Okay. They're stopping us from the very thing that we say we want. Okay. So we're actually not going to start with the number one. We're going to start with the number 0, because this is when somebody says, I had no choice. Okay. Well, that's a lie. Okay? Because the only people that have 0 choices are dead. Only dead people have no choices. Okay. That's not theory. Okay. Well, you know what I mean. Well, okay. Well, did you mean that you only had one choice? Yeah, that's it. Okay. Well, if there's only one path, you're not free, right? But people that only have one choice are slaves. So is that what we're saying? Right? I'm a slave. Yes, that's it. Well, if we're accepting that, and that really is our belief, then one, then you're absolutely right that the world is absolutely corrupt, and you have no choice. You have one choice, right? To do whatever you're told to do, carry out your life and your lot in life and whatnot. In which case, why even bother trying to learn this stuff? Why have any interest at all? If you can never carry through on it anyway, why bother? Because there's a damn inner drive that says different. Right? The problem is that either we don't have the tools or we don't have the inclination to learn a different or better way. Right? Or it's not strong enough to override the BS that is the excuses. Okay. But either way, right? To say I had no choice, right? Well, no, that's not true because you're breathing. Okay. Well, I only had one choice, right? What else was I to do? Okay. Well, okay. Then you're a slave. You're a slave to somebody else. You're a slave to the situation. You're a slave to your programming, your lack of options, right? What about 2, right? What about 2 options? Okay. Well, if we have 2 options and all things are equal across the board, right? Then we have a dilemma, right? We don't know which to pick from. Okay. 2 bad or 2 equal choices, doesn't matter. Good, bad, right? Well, I had to choose from, the best of 2 bad options. Okay. Really? I would think that you always had a third one. Okay? That maybe that's just me, right? But again, people that have a dilemma, they don't know which one to pick from, right? So they're stuck. So one is dead, but if he were dead, he wouldn't be able to talk, right? Or express that he had no choices, right? Anybody that is stuck on one, right? That's either a fully entrenched habit or she's, again, stuck, right? They can't see any other options, right? So she's not free either, right? The one with the dilemma, right? What I was taught was that to break free from a dilemma, if all things are equal, right? If they really are both good or really are both bad, then just pick one, right? Or let's lean on the side of whether, both good options. But the reason why somebody won't choose is because they're afraid of failure, or they're afraid they can't go back, no do-overs, right? Or they're concerned about wasting time, effort, energy, those kind of things. When life is messy, life is, anybody that starts anything, the one thing they have to be okay with, besides risk, is not having all the information. And so it's going to be trial and error. So the ones that drop off of that wagon very, very early are ones that they're just lazy and they know it, right? But it's only when we have 3 or more options in any given moment do we begin to approach true freedom. Hatsumi Sensei's taught this. This is huge in Mikyo. This is big in all success circles, because where 0 options is death, 1 option is slavery, 2 options is dilemma, 3 or more options allows for strategy. It allows for strategic thinking, right? And so this is where real freedom begins. But what it really allows for is a key part of ninjutsu, which is adaptability, right? One of the things I've been working on with my senior students at the moment is, and I just introduced this to everybody generally a week or 3 ago in Whiteboard Wednesday, a lesson from Hatsumi Sensei, right? With every punch, every move, or whatever, you should always have 3 options. Okay, so you can take a model like Jumonji no Kata. So if anybody knows this, start off in Jumonji no Kamae, punch comes in, you shift to Ichimonji no Kamae, deliver this counter strike, stab into Butsumetsu, do a distraction as you're shifting sides as you move away and reset, right? So Butsumetsu is the strike, or it's a target, okay? But that's a mid-level target, okay? If you can't see this, these options, then when he evades, when he counters, when he deflects, when he blocks, whatever, or moves to do that thing, we have no place to go. Okay, doing a kata like that reduces us to 1 option. Well, the kata says, well, then you're a slave to the kata. The kata is a starting point. Okay. But if we recognize that the throat or the face or the koi, the hip flexor joint, where the torso and the leg plug into each other, that kind of thing, right? Then when he moves to deflect, counter, whatever, then we just change the trajectory of the strike. Or I'm hitting with this one, but I'm already in there. So what if he jams that up, moves or whatever? My rear hand is close enough that I can tag the next thing, or I can kick him, or whatever, right? And that's where Henka comes in and practicing, because it's giving us alternates. It's giving us options in any given moment. But we could do the same thing for every other part of that kata, right? The uke nagashi could change. Okay, we reach out to catch that, to snag that arm, and we realize we're missing it, right? So now that gives us a early, on time, or late trifecta, right? Or we go to do that swatting counter strike, and it was a feint, right? And what we thought was coming in high, suddenly going for our ribs or going low. So, right, we can counter that. So I go from a swatting counter strike to this lower kind of shot, right? So again, real freedom begins when we recognize that in any given moment we have 3 or more options. Okay. Yeah, but what if I can't see 3 or more options? And well, see, this is where most people get stuck, right? Most people get stuck in what I call the land of 1 or 2, and they don't even realize it. Okay. But ninja thinking and true freedom, right? The kind of thinking everybody really wants, okay, starts at having at least 3 in any and every moment. Okay. Because the warrior isn't looking for an answer, right? He or she is creating options, right? They already recognize what they are. They're choosing one, but that puts the other 2 or 3 or whatever into the backup realm. Okay. So anyway, well, I'll come back to this here in a minute, but let me just shift my screen here. James, any questions, comments, anything like that come in? other than the I don't understand, because I'm not fielding those. Right? This is not a counseling session.
The only thing was Jimmy said "Kombanwa," and from earlier Trinity said, "Oh my God, you know me so well. I'm doing both." Mind reader.
No, what seems like mind reading is often experience. So, and just knowing, you know, knowing the person, right? If they're a creative person, chances are they're working on one of these things that I know about them creatively or whatever. But I'm also okay. I'm also okay with being wrong, right? You ever hear somebody say something like I did earlier? With Trinity's probably crocheting something, or she's looking up, whatever anime she's going to be watching later, that kind of thing. And they go, no, I wasn't doing that. I was doing this. And the person who made the educated guess, right, will immediately go into defensive mode. Well, you do it all the time, and how do I know you're not doing it? You could say no and whatever, right? Um, it was based on, and I'm pretty sure I used the word probably, right? Not, it wasn't definitive. Okay, and again, it's just, was there a high likelihood of that? Yeah, but I'm okay with not being right, okay? Because there's daughter or no daughter, she's been out on her own for quite a while, so I'm always surprised that there's a new interest or there's a new way of thinking or processing things, and especially with her having a psych degree and moving into forensics. Yeah. So, anything else from anybody?
No, sir.
Interesting. Okay. So before I move into the next section, what I want to highlight here is that this is not just a ninjutsu training thing. This is not just a how to not get trapped in the kata or the official Bujinkan way or whatever ego likes to gravitate to and grab a hold of, so it can feel like it knows. Because we're talking about freedom. Okay, Hatsumi Sensei's references to returning to zero, right? Like a baby, right? Newborn baby, everything is new, right? Every experience, every sensation, every shifting of light, every face that ends up in front of them or whatever, they have no anchor points, right? They have no language to express it. Everything either feels good, feels bad, or it's just neutral, right? They are literally one with the experience. Okay. Um, Now they learn over time, right? Something feels bad and it's not addressed. They might try cooing, they might try, making a little squeak or whatever, but eventually you're going to know that they're not comfortable, right? And they start to realize, okay, I'm uncomfortable. If I make everybody else uncomfortable, somebody will fix this discomfort, right? You have no idea how many adults are walking around with that same primitive mind driving. Well, maybe you do. If you've been around for a while, you've been paying attention, you do. Okay. So it's not even the 6-year-old driving, it's the infant driving or whatever. Okay. But this is in every area, right? What topics, what areas of our life do we feel like we have control of, right? A lot of people, especially martial artists, okay, top of the list in the dojo, wherever that is, right? It could be, in a building, a space, the corner of the YMCA that I'm borrowing, whatever, um, in the backyard, wherever the training space happens to be, actually training, right? Because they feel like they have control, right? They can decide what to work on. They can, they know this stuff. They feel to some degree, not perfect, but accomplished. Okay. They feel in control, right? But there's other areas where, right, they don't. Okay. See, in the areas where we feel like we have control, we feel like we have choice. We feel the decisions. Okay. Oh, speaking of which, when I said that the person who feels the dilemma, like they're so close to having three options. Okay. They only have, they are stuck on two, right? But there's always a third option. People do it all the time. They just think it's an escape. Okay? And that's the option to not choose. People do it all the time, but they think it's an escape, escaping the consequences, not committing, those kind of things. But in every option, do it, don't do it, don't choose right now. Okay? But what areas of our lives do we feel like we have any of the choices or any of the options below three? Okay. And the closer we get to one, the more aggravation, right? There's a direct correlation between the amount of agitation and the lower number of choices or options we think or feel we have. And then there's some areas of our lives where if that topic is brought up or it even feels like, or we've got some hints that it might pop up, we immediately shut it down. We either walk away from the conversation, we snap, anger, frustration, whatever comes up, we deflect, right? Those are huge hints, right? And so, and remember, they're all connected because it's all a life, right? All of these things are just different aspects of a single life, right? So, another way to identify the areas of limitation, right, non-freedom, is at actually looking at the reasons, excuses, justifications, whatever, of not being able to do something that we really want to do. Okay. So, like, I want to train, but I can't, right? I want to travel to a seminar, but I can't. Okay. What are the reasons that I can't? Well, time, money, permission from the significant other, family obligations, work obligations, or whatever. Okay, great. Right. So, family obligations, work obligations, well, that's a tanker truck we build ourselves. Okay. So that they come with their own little substrata in those realms. But time, money, permission, that kind of thing, right? See, now we're back to choices in those areas. Okay. Well, like I have no. Okay. So what choices do I think I'm stuck with? Right. That the end result is no time. What choices do I think I'm stuck with, or how am I processing those things that capped my finances at a point where I can't do anything? What choices do I continue to make, right, with a partner that removes them from the partner realm and puts them in the parental or authority realm? So we can always, these things need to be broken down and we need to explore them, but we don't want to because we've assigned ego the sentry job, right? The guardian's job, guard the gates so that I don't have to look in those things. Okay. So we can look at problem areas. We can look at the justifications, right? Or the reasons that we give, because they're just a flip on justifying the choices that we think we have. Okay. And the goal of Ninpo, the goal of Ninjutsu, the goal of Mikyo, right, is to free us from limitations so that we don't have any limitations. And even those things that people would look at and go, well, that's a limitation. Okay. In Ninjutsu, we apply KUDEN Tenkan, right? The juxtapositioning of truth and falsehood, and we create an alternate reality. And what that means, and we're not making shit up, right? But how do we turn a limitation into a strength? age, illness, physical level, right? Diminished time, whatever. How do we turn that into a strength? Okay? That's the secret, if a secret exists. But they're not really secrets. Okay? Secrets are only things that we can't see and we don't know how they operate. We don't know how it happens. Okay? Clarity is the thing, right? If we understand how things work, if we understand how things really are, then right, now our choice is to get with the program. Do you not get with the program? Or do you just keep yourself freaking distracted so you don't have to think about those two choices? But that's not freedom, right? That the Sanko that I pointed out earlier for the thought, word, and deed, right? Okay. These Vajra are very often dual-sided like this. Okay. It's a yin-yang. It's an in-yo in Japanese, right? So it's not just double-sided to balance it out. One's a positive side, one's a negative side. So this Vajra represents success, the channeling of thought, word, and deed. Kind of. One side represents the intentional channeling of thought, word, and deed cohesively, all in the same direction, all at the same goal. Okay. The other one is the reality that we're always applying thought, word, and deed. But accidentally, right? We're thinking certain thoughts, but we speak in another way. Like I believe something to be true, or I think something about somebody, but I'll say things differently, right? I'll treat them differently. I act differently. Okay. When it comes to success, right? Dream, oh man, it'd be really cool, right? If I could do that. But knowing my luck, or well, that's never going to happen, or whatever. While at the same time doing everything with my body that is anything but improving my condition to move in the other direction, right? So they're not channeled. They're used, all three about the same topic, but they're just not channeled. So the secret behind this Sanko is that we are successful all the time. We either successful on the positive side, where we are producing results with channeled thought, word, and deed, right? Or we're producing results by incoherent and non-focused thought, word, and deed, or activities or non-activities that can't possibly produce the thing that we say we want, words that are a reflection of our beliefs inside, and whether we say it or somebody else says it, we're constantly listening to. So we're just reinforcing the programming, but we still have the dreams of success in that area. Well, shit. Okay. That'd be like somebody planning out a stretch of roadway between one town and another, right? But so it's already planned out. It's already mapped out, this town, that town, or whatever. But the road crew goes out to start the excavation to lay out the road. And they're connecting one town on the map with another one. So, well, shit, they're clearing area in the wrong direction. And then the guys with the asphalt and all the stone and all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah, they just go out to some unknown other location and just drop the shit off there. Okay, so we've got the plan. We've got work happening, but like all the shit that's supposed to create the finished product, all the supplies are somewhere else. Right? Well, that makes sense to us. Well, that's stupid. Why would we do that? It's the same thing that we're applying with what we think is logic, but we're justifying either beliefs that have no merit, or beliefs about how limited we are in options, or we're not applying things in a strategic way. And so while the majority of people in today's world think that they can learn Ninjutsu from YouTube videos, and even from this, right? This is just hinting at it, right? What none of those things can give is a third-party perspective from someone who is already where we want to be. Yep, nagging or questioning or throwing pop quizzes at us or looking at things from the outside and helping to ferret out the things that we can't see and shedding light on them so that now we can work on them. Right? That's what a teacher's for. Right? So for all the folks that believe that they don't need one, or they'll figure it out on their own or whatever, maybe. I mean, the historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, worked it all out for himself. Well, that's the story. But he actually had 3 teachers long before he went out into the wilderness to do it on his, quote unquote, do it on his own. And they all got him further. Anyway, so let's jump into the next part here. Let me just get back to my notes. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so here's a challenge for the week. Okay, your job or your mission, whether or not you choose to accept it, because it could be a mission impossible. It's something small, but it's very, very powerful. Okay? And this is based on a principle that Hatsumi Sensei taught and that I have worked on, again, recently with senior students. Okay? And that is that the having the 2 alternatives for every strike, for every move, right? I just a little while ago went through that, right? If he jams it up, if he blocks or otherwise neutralizes the one you're doing, right? Or attempts to, right? You have 2 alternative routes to success. Okay. So this is a it's designed to be a kind of a strategic pattern interrupt. Okay. And it's going to force us out of our click whir habitual thinking, speaking, acting, or whatever. Okay. So here's the simple thing, right? And I'm betting that most people just jump to, oh, it's that thing you were just teaching your students. No, I'm going to give you something that's even simpler. Okay. It's going to seem like it has absolutely nothing to do with our training. Okay. Because people forget that KUDEN isn't about the principles and concepts and life lessons for that warriorship that people envision, right? The armor and the weapons and all that kind of stuff. It's about all of our life. Okay. We still don armor, right? In Mikyo, we put on diamond armor, right? It's truth, right? It's a symbolic reference to truth. Okay. It's invisible. Nobody can see it, but the truth can both protect us from things, but also reflect, right? Other things. It sparkles. It shines. Okay. So when people look at us, their intention determines what they see back. Okay. Very pleasant, very radiant, very alive, vibrant person. Or somebody that's, and they may not be able to see the armor. They'll see it when they come in. Okay. But okay, so what is this challenge? What is this gateway to having more options? Well, we create them. Okay, and here's the simple exercise for the week. Don't take the same route home or to work or to some place that you go on a consistent basis, right? If you've got kids that are in sports, if you have a club that you go to, a dojo, whatever, right? Don't take the same route, right? You're going to create more, okay? So you're going to, one, pick or create at least 2 new ways to get there. Whether it's a longer road, a different turn, leaving at a different time, whatever. Okay. So it could also be maybe there is only one road to get from work or the dojo or whatever to home. Maybe. Okay. Maybe you live in out in the desert and it's just one desert road to go, or you live, whatever. Okay. So get creative. Okay. Change the habitual pattern. Let someone else merge instead of cutting them off. Change your speed, right? Your consistent speed limit or your average speed, right? Stop somewhere that you don't normally stop. Okay. Check emails, make a phone call, whatever, right? And then start back off again. Okay. This was really, really instrumental. It was a big part of my police training when it came to patrol, because it not only breaks up the routine and the monotony and keeps the mind alert and awake during patrol duties, right? Prevents brain fog from kicking in, but it also makes it more difficult for criminals or people that are looking to do bullshit, right? To know when the cops might come driving by. Right? So if my routine's always the same, was do the same things the same way, right? We see this in movies all the time and whatnot, but this was a huge thing that we were taught, right? If they always know that, then they know that once you pass by, or about 15 minutes, give or take, it's going to come cruising by. Then they just hold off. They work around that. Right? Same thing with patrol patterns. Okay, now that changes the timing as well, but it makes it harder for somebody to set up an ambush. Okay, by having multiple routes, period, it's just a good safety mechanism. There could be a traffic accident, there could be road construction, whatever, and all this traffic's built up or backed up, and so if we just follow the traffic that's being detoured based on the route that they have, everybody and their freaking brother, whether they were going to take that side street or that exit or whatever, is now going in the same direction, which slows us down even more, gets in the way, causes more frustration, whatever, right? But if we already have backup routes, then we just, right? We listen, traffic, Okay, great. Psst, I'm going to do this other route. Okay. So it makes life a little bit easier, right? We don't get stuck in traffic, whatever. But also if we think we're being followed, okay, it makes us much more difficult to stalk by people that are really good at stalking. Most people think of stalking as somebody following you and whatnot, right? Those are the idiots, right? Because it's much easier for them to be spotted. They're in the same car, in the same, they're making the same turns, all that kind of stuff. But if I have 3 routes to go home from work, then when I turn off, especially if those routes can also go to the mall, or they can go somewhere else, or whatever, they can head toward Granny's house or whatever, right? Then the really good stalker, right, then they can't just see me start off in a direction and then just go around me and post up where I'm obviously going to be when I get where I'm going, because that's what I always do. Okay. If every day or every other day or whatever, I take a different route, still going home, still going to the same place. But when I make that turn off, right, so they have to follow me way longer. They have to do way more groundwork to figure out that I've got these 3 routes that all end up in the same place. Okay. Um, but it's not just about driving either, right? I could punch out. I could just hang out, punch out 10, 15 minutes, or punch out and then hang out 10, 15 minutes, whatever. Okay. It throws the timing thing off. Okay. But also doing these things, right? So again, this allows me choice. It allows me strategic choice. But the other thing it does is it keeps my brain more awake, alert, and alive. Right? I'm not just a creature of my habit. But the big thing that this does, okay, the big reason why, okay, well, let me back up. We'll give you this. I'll just keep going with this one because I kind of let it lead, right? Because 90% of our lives are on autopilot. Okay. And if you can't even change your route, okay, this may not go well. I already know this. Okay. You may not like me after this. But if you can't even change your route, okay, or come up with 2 other options to do the same thing, how are you supposed to change your life? How are you supposed to change this major shift in outcome if we can't even bring ourselves to create and use 2 other options to do something that is just simple? It's mundane. Right? There was a Navy admiral. I saw this clip of a commencement speech that he gave to Navy cadets that were graduating. Right, they were going off to their duty stations, I think. But his suggestion wasn't about a route home. It was make your bed every day. Right. If you can't do something simple consistently, how are you going to do something significant? Right. Consistently. But both of these are a change. And then if you do something else and do something else, what you're then doing is training your brain to be adaptable, to be flexible, to automatically look for or create multiple options. We go from the struggle or the task of working the exercise to a point where I promise you, you can't not do it. It goes from something that we're doing to something that's so much a part of who we are, we can't not do it. Okay. So again, right, there's lots of strategic reasons for doing this, right, that fit within what most people think of as ninjutsu, safety and self-protection and whatnot, right? Again, if you're followed, if you're blocked in, if you're delayed, whatever, right? You'll want those backup paths that you already mapped out. But more importantly, again, this biggest reason is this trains your brain to start seeing options again. Okay? We used to look for options and make up stuff when we were kids. Somehow we got derailed and there was only one right way to do things. The way we do it, of course, right? Except that some of that stuff is preventing us from getting where we want to go. I know we have lots of reasons for why, right? It's the world's fault. It's other people's fault. It's my lot in life's fault. It's karma, whatever. Okay? I buy the karma thing, just not fate or destiny. Okay. So it's to help us stop thinking this is just the way it is and start thinking, what else could I do? Right? Instead of resigning ourselves to not having any options or having any choices or having any alternate routes, we create them. Okay? That question, what else could I do, opens doors. Okay? Or shoji screens, right? If you need the Japanese reference. Okay. So most people don't need a better life. That's obvious because they settle into comfort with the one they have while bitching about all the things they can't do. But ultimately, most people don't need a better life. They need a better lens. Okay? Because options, like muscles, have to be developed. Right? If you want more from your life, if you want more from your training, if you want more for your future, you have to build the ability to see and create more paths forward. Right? There's one exercise, I can't remember what psychiatrist or psychologist or scientist or whatever came up with it. I got it through a mentor, the business realm. But he had people write down all the reasons that they couldn't do something, right? And he said, cumulatively, right, out of the room, they probably came up with damn near 100 different reasons for not being able to succeed, right? Why it can't be done, why it won't work, whatever, right? Said, you can come up with 99 reasons why you can't do something, but you only need one reason that you can. So imagine having two other options, right? But you only need one to make it work. Okay? This is the beginning of that process. Okay? So again, right, kind of projecting this forward, because I know for a lot of folks, this isn't their cup of tea, but for those of you who, for whatever reason, stick this out, no matter how passive aggressive or abusive I end up being, because I still walk on tiptoes. This is the start of things, right? So this Wednesday, right, for Whiteboard Wednesday, I'm going to dive deeper into this same process, right, into how we apply this exact same concept in our training. And we're going to do it with the Kyonopo. We're going to do it with variations. Okay? We're going to do it with cross lineage adaptation drills. Okay? I'm going to be approaching this alternate methods, alternate options for doing the same thing. Right? It's in the Ha area of training for within the Shuhaori framework. It's the thing that Takama Sensei passed on, that if you have this, right, the process, right? When I say Kyonopo, not talking about the list of techniques. Okay. If you have the Kyonopo, then you've got some serious power, but the Kyonopo, rather than haphazardly just coming up with Henka, or worse yet, people with shitty taijutsu, who end up like not being able to do the thing that, like the kata or the technique or whatever, right? They end up doing something, right? And then they label that Henka. Yeah. Anyway, so there is this process that's built in, right, that I've been talking about across life. But for those who miss the connection, this is built into Ninjutsu. This is built into something that Hatsumi Sensei has been teaching on since the beginning, right? And it absolutely, when we get it, it absolutely like just it changes everything. I mean, you end up with more options in any given moment, right? Which allows for absolute freedom because no matter what he does, James, Trinity, a bunch of you guys who have trained with me often enough and long enough, and for some of you, you might train with other teachers or whatever, where you've heard this thing right from the uke. Do something and they'll try to escape and they fall right into something else, and they try to escape and they fall right into something else. And besides the questions like, well, how do you know how to like do that next thing? I'm not chasing anything. Okay. I've done the process. Right. And so to me, it just feels like things just fall into place, right? It's just giving me this thing. And so I'm not chasing things and I'm not trying to crystallize it. Right. But this phrase keeps falling out of people's mouths, right? They'll try to escape or they'll try to beat it or whatever. And they fall into this other technique and they'll go, Jesus, there's always something. Right. Well, if there isn't, then I'm dead, right? Because if there are no options, ta-da, right? If there's only one way to do it. Then if he throws a monkey in my wrench and screws me up, then the technique all falls to hell, right? But it's not creative for the sake of being creative either. Okay. So again, we'll look at this during Whiteboard Wednesday, and then obviously that'll lead us into the Friday masterclass, where we're going to experiment with creating options, which should form a loop that will force us back into understanding the principles and concepts more correctly, so that we get to a point where you almost can't fail. Okay? Any failed technique or failing technique, right? It's only failing because we keep chasing it. Okay? There's no such thing as a failed technique. Any technique that's failing is actually the setup for something else. So anybody that is trying to box things in, they're not going to get this. And anybody that's just being creative for the sake of creative and making shit up, well, they're not getting it either, because there's no strategy behind that other than, I don't know, showing off or making ego feel good. Okay. So anyway, so try the assignment, right? Break the pattern. Find an area in your life. Maybe it's, and again, this has nothing to do with any given area, but a sub assignment might be to bite the bullet, pull the trigger, whatever you want to call it, and acknowledge, find, right? And acknowledge, you'll know, right? You'll know, because the frustration or the knot in the gut or the agitation or whatever will just start bubbling to the surface as soon as you start looking at an area of your life where, and I promise you, you don't normally look there. And if you do, it's for a quick blip, and then you go on and distract yourself with something else. Ego's really good at that. Okay. But this exercise isn't about any given area, but it starts to break the pattern. Okay? And we have to understand where those patterns are so we can break them. And if we're not breaking them, then we're adding options. We're adding choices. Even if all we start with is recognizing that to choose not to choose, right? To choose to not pick an option is a choice. Okay? It's not an escape. There's still consequences to not choosing. Okay? So this leads to responsibility. This leads to a lot of power. But with great power comes great responsibility. I couldn't help myself. Sorry. Right? So, and if you're ready to stop living with one option, right, and start building real strategic freedom, right, then, if you don't normally, then start by joining me on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern for Whiteboard Wednesday, right? share this episode with someone who needs that reminder, right? That you always have a choice. You always have at least one or two more choices than, this is going to sound backwards. It's going to sound inside out. You always have one or two more options than you choose to believe that you have. You just need to see more than one. Okay. So anyway, let me flip things back over here. James, now what do we have? Questions, comments? You hear anybody fall on their Z key? Admit that they're sleeping?
No, just that Dave jumped in.
Dave has to stop jumping in because his back is bad and he'll have to go lay down.
Well, he said that you can rest easy now that he's here.
Did he seriously just type that out, or are you trying to get him in trouble?
No, he says you can rest easy now. Dave is here.
Mother. Okay. Anyway, now that that's been done, some people's ego's so big they can't even stand beside themselves. All right, is that it? That's all we have. Seriously?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so please, mark your calendar. Next week, there will not be a KUDEN. I will probably preload an autoplay on a past episode, but there will not be one. There will also not be a Whiteboard Wednesday. And for my inner circle groups, Ninpo Mastery and Ninpo Elite, there's no Tuesday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern coaching session, nor will there be a Friday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern coaching session, right? I've got two groups in there. Ninpo Elite, you get both of them anyway. There won't be any because I and my wife will be celebrating our anniversary late out. Well, depends on the day. We'll either be at sea or we'll be in Bermuda. So going a little cruise, and there'd just be a song for that, didn't there? Won't you take me on a sea cruise? Anyway, so there won't be, but check your email. I'm finishing up this week on the events pages for fall, our annual fall camp. And I think that's in October. Yeah, that's in October. And then our yearly Dai-Shihan, that is in January. I think that's January 9th to the 11th, maybe. I don't have the fall camp dates stuck in my head at the moment. But you can always check the onlineninjaacademy.com/events page. So that normally gets put up first, and then I work on a bigger page for people that need more details, more information, although I think I put plenty on the events page. Either way, I still do it that way. And we're let's see, I have to get the artwork to my guy Eric by Wednesday for the t-shirts that we have that people can grab for the different events. I think that's it for the moment. We'll get more information out about other things. Oh, I take that back. Let's see, September 20th. September 20th. Yeah. I head up on the 19th, which is my daughter's birthday, Trinity's birthday. The 20th, I will be at Lemoyne College in Syracuse, New York. One of my guys, Mike Guzik, is hosting a seminar. And so we'll have that information up as well. So if you're in the area, it would be great to have you. Right? It's a single day event. And then, that's good. And then my other student, Christina Major, she's in the Poconos. So she's in the eastern Pennsylvania area and she's working with groups in that area, trying to set up some things between Ninpo and or Mikyo. Right. So as those things pop up on the schedule, we'll be looking at that. And who else was doing something? somebody else is looking to put something together, but it's toward the Midwest or even farther out. So, yeah, so as those things pop up on the schedule, and if anybody's interested in hosting in your area, you can always reach out and we can have a little chat, because I don't just let somebody just set things up unless you have lots of experience with that. It's a partnership, because I'm going to promote it to my email list. I've got near 1,600 people on that list, or across a bunch of different lists. But people listen to this, watch this, whatever. Okay? And it's not just in the States, right? No matter where you happen to be, if you want to set something up, reach out and we can make it happen. Okay. All right. That's it. James, anything else? Anybody else slide a comment in there before wrap this up?
Yeah, Trinity said this kicked me to start working on my Sanmitsu topic for the National Defense podcast. Your topics always push me to think of new aspects of work I'm already doing.
Yeah. So she's based a couple of things on what she's learned in INPO and combined that with her work in psychology and those kind of things. And she's been invited by a professor, I believe, that does one of these podcasts in the defense arena. So she's actually going to be interviewed. She's going to be a guest on one of these podcasts. So cool stuff, right? So again, while people can believe that, well, of course she's doing it. She grew up with you. I mean, how lucky could that be? Yeah, no. Kids often don't see the opportunity until they get into certain areas, and like she's back with a vengeance. But yeah, there were lots of times growing up that I don't want to go to class. I don't care. So just because I've had lots of students over the years think that my kids are so lucky, right? They're growing up in this. They didn't have to find it, and whatever. But yeah, that's not how it works. Okay, sometimes it does. But she's, of all my kids, stepkids, she's absolutely the most involved. Right. So, but I think there's a realization that she's stepping into a realm that, one, this can be used. Two, regardless of what realm she steps into, this is going to help a lot. And three, she's stepping into a realm where, she should probably have more than, the being a graduate of Thursday's class at 3:00 and getting a certificate for, basic self-defense maneuvers. James is nodding, right? He was in corrections for a little while, right? I'm not kidding when I say it's graduate Thursday's class at 3:00. When I went through military police school, right, we had 3 days of training, but it was really like 3 afternoons. 2 of them we learned, across those 2, we learned what I affectionately called the government 6. There were these 6 techniques that you learned. And then on the third one, we reviewed and we demonstrated that we could do them to minimum proficiency so they could check off a block that we received the training. And then we were recertified on those things once or twice a year, whatever. It wasn't until I ended up stationed in what was then West Germany in my military police unit that the command realized what I was training in and what I was doing, and went outside that box and put me in charge of wilderness survival training and firearms training. And then they just called it defensive tactics, but it was the unarmed use of things and whatnot. And guys were required to do training weekly instead of going to a single class and then demonstrating BS proficiency, so that it could be signed off on. I mean, so it wasn't really about you learning anything. It was about the government covering its ass, right? Or the department, right? James, you did that, right? It was county corrections, I think, right? It was just them covering their ass to say that you had been trained. Yeah. So when I say congratulations, you're a graduate of Thursday's class at 3:00, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. A lot of folks already know that. Not that I'm not kidding, but how that whole system works, right? So, anyway, anything else pop up?
No, sir.
Dave. No, Dave didn't say something else. Look at the surprised look on my face. You were filtering around, weren't you? You were trying to cover for him.
Yeah, so, but we did put "That's awesome" for Trinity.
Oh, okay. All right. In that case, I forgive him, but only for so long. There's always class tomorrow. All right, guys, that's it. Yeah, so don't forget. Was it next week? Next week, no sessions, and then we'll be back on track at the end of the month. Okay. All right. I hate skipping weeks, but I need a break. All right. So that's it. I will talk to everybody again next time. So hopefully I'll see you on Wednesday. If not, I'll see you next week on KUDEN. Get more of KUDEN Radio. Subscribe through your favorite podcasting site or join our clan of serious modern warriors at online